later on in life, you become interested in menopause, HRT, hormone replacement therapy. And this is a really good thing to go into coaching. So I can help a lot of women and give out the information about menopause, because menopause is so much shrouded in stigma and shame, and nobody wants to talk about it. So I thought maybe it's my mission really to educate a lot of women. So as a menopause coach is to educate, empower, support, and encourage women, and show them that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Topic is very important: empowering through the change, coaching women through menopause. So this is what you're on board with us, Simona Morandi, joining us from Denmark. You are a certified health and wellness coach, nutrition coach as well. And your specialization is like menopause and pre-menopause. And you're also associated with the International Sports Science Association, ISSA. And your website is morandihealth.com. So it's a wonderful possibility once again to have you on this platform of research. We try to cover different expertise and different domains. So that's the reason you're on board. Thank you so much, ma'am, once again joining us from Denmark. So would like to move on to my first question, a very important question. It says what inspired you to become a menopause coach, and what was your own experience?
Okay, hi. My interest in menopause was sparked at a very early age. I was in my 20s, and that's quite an odd thing, because I know it's sort of later on in life, you become interested in menopause. But I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I was in a yoga class, and I met this woman who, at the time, I didn't know that she was very apparently famous. She was a TV star, and I don't know if you've ever heard, probably not, but her name was Suzanne Summers, and she was this huge TV star, but she was always in this whole early on. We're talking about 30 years ago. So she was always interested, and she always talked about menopause. So I by chance bumped into her, and she looked just amazing for her age. And I asked her, I said, what was her secret? And she said, obviously, it was, she ate well and she exercised, but the most important thing was that she took HRT, hormone replacement therapy. And she told me, that was the best advice a person could give me, was that when I reached the age that I should look into getting into HRT. So that was the beginning, really. So that sparked my interest. And later on, as I got older and I'd left LA and I was living in London, and at that point, I started to go through perimenopause. And like a lot of women, I went to a doctor, and I was experiencing a lot of anxiety and mostly anxiety, and heart palpitations at night. And so I went naturally to my doctor, to my GP, and I asked for help. I said, well, I'm experiencing these heart palpitations, and I'm really suffering from anxiety. What should I do? So, instead of looking at my age and thinking, well, it's probably her hormones are fluctuating. I was about, I think, around 42, 43. And he just gave me some anti-anxiety medication, and he sent me off. But luckily, as I said, when I was always interested in health, and because of Susan Summers, I got this interest in hormones. So I knew myself that it was probably my hormones. So I went and I sought help elsewhere. There was a menopause place in London. It was the only clinic that they had. So I went to a doctor there, and I got my hormones checked, and I went on HRT. So that was my interest in hormones from an early young age. But the real reason why I really went into coaching, health coaching, was about 3 years ago. My husband, he got very sick with cancer. He had, it developed into stage 4 cancer. and the doctors really didn't have much hope for him. And I really started getting to studying about nutrition, studying about what we can do, what are the alternative ways. Of course, he got treatment, immunotherapy for his cancer, but also we just, generally we eat very well, because I'm half Iranian, half Italian. So, like Indian, cuisine, Iranian cuisine, we have a lot of herbs, and I grew up, my mother always cooked amazing foods, and so I grew up with a healthy diet, but we completely changed the diet. And he actually survived, and now he's cancer-free, and the doctors are all amazed. Really, yeah. So I know. So I think because of that, and because of my interest in health, and I'm also a very empathetic person. I always like to help people. I've always been into health and exercise and diet, and I've always given advice to people. So I thought, well, I think this is a really good thing to go into coaching, so I can help a lot of women and give out the information about menopause, because menopause is so much shrouded in stigma and shame, and nobody wants to talk about it. So I thought maybe it's my mission really to, educate a lot of women. So that's sort of a long story, but that's how I really got into becoming a certified health coach, specializing in supporting women in midlife.
So thank you so much for letting us know about your journey, how it happened and you moved on in your journey, and a wonderful narrative, wonderful explanation, and encouraging a story of your own husband, where like now he is cancer-free, and how much important it is for us to practice good nutritional practices in our life to combat physical ailments and medical ailments. So would like to move on to my second question. A very important question is, which symptoms and challenges do most women struggle with in silence?
Yes. Well, generally women during this perimenopause and menopause period, they suffer around 100 different symptoms they could suffer. And the symptoms could be from anything from mild to severe, but mostly it's severe. And around 80% of women, they suffer from 1 to more symptoms. But the most common symptoms are hot flashes, night sweats, weight gain, sleep disruptions, anxiety, depression, vaginal dryness, and the list goes on and on. And as you know, I don't know if you know, but estrogen is highly anti-inflammatory. So when we don't get estrogen, we have estrogen receptors all over our body, in all our cells, in all our organs. And when we don't get the estrogen, obviously then our body cannot function properly. And also estrogen is very sort of a natural lubricant for our body. So we have, for our eyes, our ear, that wax in our ears, the lubricant in our eyes, and all over in our joints as well. That's why we get stiff joints. That's why we get dry eyes. So it causes a lot of havoc to our bodies. These are the most common ones. But as I said, there's so many things that even women don't associate with menopause or premenopause. Like for instance, if they get tinnitus, they're ringing in their ears, you think, well, it's probably aging, but it is all connected to estrogen. And sorry, the question was that why is it women suffer in silence? Was that the question?
Yeah,
you asked
what
second part.
Challenges like women struggle within silence?
Yeah, I think so. Menopause is very closely linked and shrouded in stigma and shame, and I think also it's very associated very closely with aging. And, a woman's value, I think, in society is based on her, her youth, her vitality. And I think a lot of women, of course, women don't want to be associated with getting older, because then they will feel obsolete, they feel, irrelevant. And I think that's why a lot of women don't really want to talk about it. Also in the workplace, I think there's so much discrimination, age discrimination, and if women admit they're in menopause or premenopause, they're admitting, that they're old, so they can lose their jobs. So I think there's just so much stigma attached and so much shame attached to it, and that's why a lot of the women, they suffer really in silence about it. And hopefully the narrative is now changing, and there's more talk about this, and I think a lot of celebrities are now highlighting this issue. So I think hopefully in the future there's going to be less and less shame associated with menopause, and aging is not, well, it's quite, I think this society as well, we value youth so much, but I hope at some point, their narrative will change, and the way people think about it will change, and then women can talk more freely about menopause, and then all the stigma will be, will be lifted, and the silence would be lifted. Hopefully. I'm looking forward to that day.
A lot for letting us know, like our hormonal changes and the narratives also have got to be changed, and in fact they're changing in the times to come, and how it's difficult. Many of our talks we cannot just bottle up, because it becomes very difficult being women. Very gender-wise, our conversations, our communications, and exchange of thoughts, and the way we feel becomes very difficult. So, would like to move on to my third question. A very important question says, how can coaching support women emotionally during menopause transitions?
Yeah. Yes. Well, my job as a menopause coach is to educate, empower, support, and encourage women, and show them that there's light at the end of the tunnel. I think, as I mentioned, touching on our previous question, there's so much stigma attached, and a lot of people don't talk about it. A lot of women don't talk about this. So they really suffer in silence, and they're, as I mentioned, the symptoms, you have the anxiety, you have the depression, you have brain fog. That's another thing as well. That a lot of women, they suffer through. So there's a lot of, and also their bodies are changing, and a lot of women don't understand what's going on. They're doing the things that they did in their 20, 30 in terms of exercise and diet, and they're gaining weight. So they're losing their confidence, and they lose their self-worth because of all the pressures of society for them to see them as a young person. So I think there's just so much pressure on women, and I think as a woman, their role is to take care of other people. That's their thing, of to take care of their husbands, their children, their elderly, parents. So there's just a lot of pressure on women, and while they're physically going through all these changes and they don't have anybody to speak to, I think there's a lot of emotional distress. And I think the role of a coach is very imperative here, because the coach, they have the knowledge, they know what the woman is going through. And when as I said, it happened to me, and my experience is not only unique to me, but a lot of women, when they approach their doctors, they're being dismissed. And especially when they're in menopause, the doctors tell them, well, it's part of life, it's a stage of life, you just have to get through it. And that's the general consensus, the general, sort of what they've been told by their doctors. So they don't really have anywhere to turn to. So it's very, very distressing. And it puts a lot of stress on their relationships, relationship with their partners, relationship with their colleagues, with their children. So women are in a really bad place. So I think as a coach, you can give a lot of support emotionally to women, to boost their confidence, to boost their self-worth, to give them, to say there's hope, there's help, there's a solution to all your problems, you can fix all of this, and there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I think just giving that support, and also with the education we have, we study how, because as I said, things that work in your 20s don't work necessarily when you're menopause. So there's ways how to get rid of the, excess weight. There's ways to, you have to change your diet. So it's all these knowledge that a coach has, so can give to women. So hopefully she starts losing the weight. She starts her cognition improves. She can think more clearly. So there's many ways a coach can help, both physically and emotionally, to a woman during this stage.
The wonderful narrative, there is light in the end, at the end of the tunnel. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Things are changing, narratives are also undergoing transitions. So it's a wonderful possibility, a wonderful outlook for our upcoming society and generation. Thanks a lot for that update.
Yes.
Would like to move on to my fourth question. A very important question says, what daily habits or lifestyle changes do you recommend to manage menopause naturally?
Yes. Naturally, there's a lot that a woman can do. I call it the 4 pillars of health. So it's about changing nutrition, movement, sleep hygiene, and stress management. So in terms of nutrition, there's a lot a woman who's in menopause can do. They can, the most important thing that a woman should eat, I think, is that, of course, there's a no-brainer, to cut out sugar, to cut out simple carbohydrates, to cut out processed foods. They're not doing you any favors. And another really important thing is that women should consider eating a lot of fiber, because we all know the importance of gut microbiome. The gut microbiome is so crucial to our health, to our mental health, to our physical health. And when we eat fiber, we're feeding the gut microbiome. We're feeding the when our microbiome has a lot of variety and has a lot of diversity, that's when we are the healthiest. And all our hormones, our estrogen gets metabolized in our guts. So when we have a diverse microbiome, then we can metabolize estrogen much better. Also, fiber reduces inflammation. Fiber feeds the gut microbiome, and that way we reduce inflammation. And as I mentioned before, estrogen is highly anti-inflammatory, so we lose that. So we need the fiber to help with that. And also, fiber keeps us satiated for longer, so then we don't feel like we have to eat all the junk food that we eat. So it has a lot of value to eat fiber in our food. And another thing I recommend in our diet is eating protein. Because another aspect of that I haven't touched on is in menopause and premenopause, women, they lose a lot of muscle. A woman loses about 3% of her muscle from her 30s onwards, and after menopause, it's really a drastic drop in muscle. And we need muscle for to have a good metabolism and to be healthy. And also, muscle puts pressure on bone, and also women lose a lot of bone when they get older, and they suffer from osteoporosis. That's one of the biggest problems during menopause. So protein is a very important aspect of the diet. So I really recommend fiber and protein, and cutting out sugar and simple carbohydrates and processed food. So that's one of the things that I really stress to my clients. And in terms of exercise as well, exercise is completely different in menopause, because during menopause, women have very high cortisol levels. And that is the one that actually causes the fat to gather around the midsection. Your body composition changes a lot. So you don't want to put too much stress on the body. So the aerobics and the running and the things that we used to do before doesn't work in menopause. So we need to do more gentle exercise or HIIT. Have you heard of HIIT exercise, high intensive training? So that really works. And also lifting heavy weights. Heavy weights are very, very important for a woman, because that's how you build your muscle, and also and then also it helps with building bone. So those are the 2 things. And of course, sleep. That's the most important thing. I teach them about how to have a proper sleep hygiene, because you know yourself that during sleep, our immune system is working, and so it's to let that work properly and to get the body rested. So you have to do this as a protocol. You have to do around sleep, to make sure that the room is cool. You're not on your phone or watching TV, right before sleep. So, the blue light is so disruptive to the circadian rhythm. And circadian rhythm is so, and also stress about meditation. So there are a lot of different things you can do. Apart from the HRT, if a woman wants to go down the hormone route, then that's also fantastic. But if they don't want to, in terms of lifestyle, there's a lot that you can do to mitigate all the problems that might be, might cause detrimental effect to a woman's health.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting us know on this important question. What I understand, like your 4 pillars, theories, nutrition, exercise, proper sleep, and stress management. So very important for women also and for men also. So this is like it has a strategic way to combat any physical changes and ailments. That's what I understand. Now I would like to move on to my 5th question, which is also a final and rapid question, but very, very important question says, if you would like to give one message to every woman approaching menopause, what would it be?
Yes. I would definitely tell women that they need to speak up. They need to talk to each other. They need to share their stories, their experiences, their struggles with each other. Because the more we talk about it, the more the stigma is lifted. And then the conversation becomes normal. It normalizes it. And this whole thing we talked about before about, women suffering in silence. Hopefully that will be lifted the more we talk about it. And when a woman talks about it to another woman, then it sort of gives the other woman the permission to talk about it as well. Because they think, oh, well, she can freely talk about it. So obviously it's okay for me also to talk about my struggles. So I think that's a really, really important point, that let's all talk about this. Let's bring this out in the open. And also another thing I would say, I would like the women to hold the healthcare system, they hold their, doctors, and hold their, governmental representatives, policymakers. They should hold them accountable. And they should speak up and say, well, this is my right, you should give me the proper help that I need and not just dismiss me and, send me off. I think that's the biggest message I really have for women. They need to stand up for themselves. They've been ignored for so long by the medical establishment and by their doctors and by society. So that's my message to women.
So thank you so much. What I understand that women have to speak up, and they also have to consider their healthcare systems, and open talks have to happen. So once again, thank you so much joining this platform, WISO, and covering this topic, empowering women through change, coaching women through menopause. We talked about what inspired you to get into this field, women, and symptoms and challenges women face struggling in silence, and coaching support women emotionally during menopause transitions, and daily habits that can help lifestyle changes, recommendations you've talked about, and approaching menopause, what simple message you offered was really important.
Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am, once again joining us from Denmark. As you're already familiar that WISO is a platform where we try to step through the noise to provide you most reliable and relevant and scientific body of data. It may be quantitative and qualitative, but much of our part sociology, the texture is sociology. That's the reason we keep conducting international and national interviews in order to make research and academia also for lay people a database so that society can be expanded and a better life can become a possibility on this planet Earth. Thank you so much, ma'am, once again joining us from Denmark.